Welcome to another episode of the Communities of Character podcast. I'm Jennifer Hogan, a former high school administrator, and now I serve as a character coach for local schools. On today's episode, you'll get to hear from educational psychologist, best-selling author, and Today Show contributor, Dr. Michele Borba. Dr. Borba is an internationally renowned educator, award-winning author, and parenting and child expert. On today's episode, we'll talk about the importance of developing character and character skills, how we get the concept of resilience wrong, and stories of hope. Enjoy this chat with Dr. Michele Borba. Hey, Dr. Borba, and welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Well, I'm so excited to have you on today's episode and for our listeners to learn more about you and your lifetime, really your lifetime of research. You have studied about, you have written about, and really championed for good character. And your work is used in character education across the globe. So what was that spark that got you started in the area of developing character?
Well, this is kind of miserable kind of way to start, but I was working on army bases overseas. And one of them was right near Poland. So I decided to take a little sideway trip to Auschwitz. And I was so, I got into myself into a crying jag on how people could be so inhumane or just unbelievable. But I remember leaving that and turning and walking into the small little bookstore they had. And I picked up this book, and it was called The Altruistic Personality by Samuel Alliner, and it changed my life. This man is now one of the leading social psychologists we have in the world. He is a Holocaust survivor. This perfect stranger named Bewinda rescued him as a 12-year-old child while his whole family went off to a death camp and died. And so the rest of his life, he's been trying to figure out why people become Bewindas. What makes an altruist? And it's an incredible piece of research that changed my life because he started interviewing hundreds of rescuers. And they all said almost always the same three things. It was social responsibility and empathy that had been bred into them, character. But the way they learned it is by first seeing examples in their life, like a parent or a teacher or a grandmother, somebody who was the example of character. The second one was expectations. In this family, we are expected to be socially responsible. No. In this family, we are a caring, kind family. And the third was experiences. So they began to do small deeds of character and kindness. And each time they did a caring kindness deed, it started to develop an identity set that's who I am as a person.
Wow, that really is an incredible story. And you have really devoted, I would say, your entire body of work to writing about parenting and children and helping children to be successful. And I want to ask, across your body of work and your years of research, what are you seeing now in regards to our parents and our children and their mental health and well-being?
Oh, gosh, Natalie, unfortunately, that's, again, we're starting out on a dismal note, but I do have the, I guess, the honor to be able to almost every week, I'm working in a different school, someplace, not only in the United States, but I just came back from Abu Dhabi. I'm on my way to the Philippines, Singapore, and I'm seeing everywhere a new trend that is very, very dismal. Now, yes, COVID is part of it, but COVID amplified it. We saw prior to COVID, 1 in 5 American kids going to suffer from a mental health disorder. We're now looking at CDC says 1 in 3. And I think one of the pieces for it is character's been kind of dormant. I think it's the character skills that help kids bounce back. The last book I wrote was called Thrivers. And what I wanted to identify was the character strengths that research says do really help children bounce back and become resilient. And the fascinating thing is they're made up of skills. I think we've put too much on GPA and test score. And so character's lying dormant.
Yeah, it does seem like we've started out on a dismal start, but I do want to say that there is hope, and there really is hope in your book, Thrivers, that you just mentioned. And the book is amazing. And, you write about what sets apart the kids who struggle and the kids who thrive. And And in it, you share that there are 7 essential as well as teachable. I love it. You share that they are teachable character strengths of thrivers. So I wanted to ask, would you just walk us through those 7
Oh,
yeah,
I'd,
why
l-
how did you
I'd, l-
select those?
well, with a lot of Post-its and 50,000 pieces of research in front of me, what I decided to do was just tackle this based on science of which strengths kept coming up over and over again in scientific research on what helps kids bounce back. And
Mm,
I started by looking at science on kids who defied homelessness, war zones, poverty, sexual abuse. Despite it, they kept bouncing. And it was because they'd learned what I discovered were 7 strengths. Now, it's a rare kid that has all 7,
mm,
but what I have learned is that these 7 seem to be critical. I don't care if you're 2 or 93, and they're universal. The first one seems to be confidence, that these kids have a strong knowledge of their strengths. They recognize their weaknesses, but they focus more on their who, and that helps them bounce back. The second one is empathy. Oh my gosh, we know that one is critical, but these kids
mhm.
think we, not me. Resilient children have an ability to have social competence so they can connect with another person who can help them, and they need that. Third one is self control. They can put the brakes on impulses so they can think straight and regulate. They've learned coping strategies. Fourth is integrity. They have strong moral codes. So when somebody pushes them to do something that goes against their grain, they're able to say no because it's so internally embedded. Then comes curiosity. I love that one. It's this creativity that helps the kid learn there's no problem so great that can't be solved. They're
Mhm.
little problem solvers. They're figuring out what's my plan B. Perseverance is going the 9 yards, but it doesn't start with perseverance. They start with some of these other strengths and then they add to them together so that they have the grit to keep going and they have that mindset that says it's just a matter of how much effort I put into it. And finally is optimism and hope. They have this outlook that says I can get through this. They're realistic, they're not Pollyannas, but they also have an ability to counter the pessimism so they can keep on going straight through.
Yes, and I love that you said you don't have to have all 7. I don't want parents or educators to get overwhelmed or try to tackle them all at once, and I love your book so much because it's grounded
Oh,
in research and it's full of examples and stories and just practical, down to earth strategies for helping children learn to thrive. I really think it would be hard to find a parent or an educator who didn't want to see these strengths in their children and their students. But some may ask, how do I start? So is there one character strength you recommend as a starting point or like a first step that you would recommend for parents
y-
and educators?
yes, I think the most valuable thing that parents and teachers tell me is that there's a core assets survey in the book where you can identify what your child's strengths are. And if we can start with the positive, 77% of the time we focus on our kids' deficits, not their strengths. That's dismal. So take a moment that's quiet, look through and say, hey, this is who my child's is. This is their natural nature. Then if you start with the strengths, at least it's going to be a little more positive as opposed to you need to work on that. And
Yeah.
what it'll have is you'll have the foundation. What I discover is that confidence is going to also help all the rest of the 6. They have this multiplier effect. You add any 2 character strengths together and it just multiplies the outcome of it. So I'd say take a 3x5 card, walk around the house, a different one for each child, and say, what drives that child? When are they most eager? When are they most excited? When are they most attentive? And their attention is the longest. Because we also know something that when stress builds, one of the simplest things that kids go to decompress in a healthy manner is a hobby. I
Mm.
don't care if it's knitting or reading or listening to Mozart. A little girl, that 14-year-old said, I listened to Mozart. I said, really? I wasn't expecting that. She said, yeah, my mom got really sneaky. During COVID, she kept playing all this different kind of music over the loudspeakers in her home. And I realized every time Mozart came in, I kind of got calmer. So I loaded it up on my iPad, and that's what I listen to when I get stressed. I went, oh, brilliant.
What a great story. in our work at the Hope Institute, we work with schools who are building cultures of character, and we stress the importance that they choose their core values with input from all of their stakeholders, and that they nurture those core values through all aspects of their school life, because we want their core values to become intrinsic, and
Yes.
yes, as Dr. Tom Lacona, who's the father of modern character education, would say, that character development involves the head, the heart, and the hand, or knowing the good, desiring the good, and doing the good. And in your book, you share a powerful story about a high school teacher in Kansas, Norm Kennard, who has the class motto, "He who changes one person changes the world entire." And for those of who haven't read your book, would you share with our listeners how
Oh,
he empowered his students to learn by example from Holocaust survivor Irina?
oh,
Great.
I I love Norm Kennard. Thank you, because here's a history teacher, and he says and he swears that the best way to teach character is through history or
Mm,
through your natural subject. Okay, that alone says we're going to weave character in. It's not going to be an extra program or an extra worksheet. The second thing he wants to do is help each of his students leave with that motto that he who changes the world entire, so that anybody can make a change. And then he has one thing that I adore. He has a box that's old and broken up, but he said he goes through newspaper articles or magazines, and every time he finds a real story about a real person who has had a positive impact, he rips the story out or the news article and puts it in the box.
oh,
Now he's got one more thing. Now watch and see, because every one of us can have a box like that. But
mm,
he also has his kids each year work in teams because he wants them to be little collaborators and learn
mm.
to get along. And he said, now I want you all that year to find one person who just you think really made an impact on the world. And the four girls said we couldn't think of anybody. He said, then go to the box. And that's where they found the story about Irina Sendler. Nobody knew who she was. She wasn't even in Google. But they ran up to their teacher and said, it says here that she saved 2,500 kids. How could that be? There's nothing about her in Google. Absolutely nothing. Why wouldn't anybody know? And I love what the teacher said: dig deeper. We're
Mm.
dealing with a population of kids who ask Alexa for anything, or Google's one source and said that's the answer. He said, dig deeper. So they started calling Holocaust museums survivors, and they found that she does exist. She lives in Poland. Here's this. They came running in saying, oh my gosh, she was less than 5 feet, and she disguised herself every day as a nurse, and she walked through the Warsaw ghetto carrying a suitcase disguised to the Nazis and said, I need to go give typhus shots to the Jews so you don't get typhus. Oh, for heaven's sakes, go in there and start giving out typhus shots. What she did was she walked into these parents and she convinced them to let her save their children. And she said, I'll try to do anything I can to reunite you after the war is over. One by one, can you imagine? She put each child in a suitcase, in a coffin, in a pipe, past Nazi guards, saved 2,500 children. Now, they were so overcome by this woman. They said, we have to let everybody know the story. So they did something that really builds empathy. They decided to put on a little play called Life in a Jar. And what they did was put on the play, they put it on the play to their local community, the girls, does this woman still live? And they said, yeah, we found out today she is. Well, then you must go find her and you must meet her. The group gave the girls and the teacher airline tickets to go fly to Poland. I think she was 96 at the time. I have a picture of the girls. In fact, I interviewed one of them. She said it was just life changing. To this moment, we have to keep telling her story. Now, that's character in action. To me, that's Tom Lacona's knowing the good, desiring the
Absolutely.
good, and doing the good. Because what that teacher had the children do was put on the play or research the topic so they understood the why of character, and they couldn't quit once they understood the why. They were so overcome by it, and they said, he who changes one person changes the world entire. That became us because we let the world know about Irina Sendler.
Absolutely. I love the ripple effect. And
Yeah.
Mr. Kennard and what he's done for his students. And, it just shows it's not too late for teenagers. And
Yeah.
really, in fact, your book has strategies that are age appropriate from preschool on up. And
Oh,
yeah, I hope that our listeners will read or reread your book. I'll provide a link in the show notes. It's an incredible collection of stories like Mr. Kennard and simple, easy to implement strategies, I feel like, to get going and teach character and develop character and make our kids become thrivers. Another topic that I want to talk about, it kind of is a dismal topic. I'm sorry for that,
yeah.
but I'm really tired of it, and I think you and probably a lot of us are too. This endless loop that we've got going on now of negative news stories and not sharing the positive things, like this story of Mr. Kennard. Thank you for sharing it with the world. But there is something called mean world syndrome, and would you talk about that and like how the
Yeah.
strategies in your book can help with that?
I think we all need to tune into this. It's George Gerber who's come up with the term mean world syndrome. And that means if we continue to see, particularly our kids, the
Mhm.
world as a mean and scary place, what begins to happen is pessimism just blossoms, optimism and hope go down. There goes your empathy, up goes your stress, and children's character will also be in a nosedive level. So, how do you counter mean world syndrome in a mean and scary world? And the reality is, this has been a really tough 3 years
Mhm.
when our children have been exposed to so many dismal images. I think the first thing goes back to Norm Kennard. The girls told me that the moment that changed their life in that history lesson was the moment they saw the image, an actual photograph of
Mhm.
all the children that Irena Sendler had saved. Images can take a children up
Yes.
or take it down. So the first thing is, if you really want hearts to go open and hearts to just rise through, I'd say every day start your classrooms with what's a good news report that happened today. It could be
Mhm.
out on the playground, it could be in the cafeteria, or let's look through the newspaper. I see some schools, I was in Murray Elementary in Washington, D.C., they are now starting the day over the loudspeaker system. I was in Long Island. A group of teens told me, we're so worried about all the mean stuff that's happening in the world. It's really stressing us out. I love teens. The group of boys. So they said, but we got it covered. I said, what are you guys doing? He said, we convinced our superintendent to buy a great big huge plasma TV. I said, and what are you watching? Oh, good stuff. Every day she puts on images of good stuff that's happening in the world. I happened to be at the school where I saw the kids walking into school and you could see the stress and the pessimism on them. They
That's
walked through the
amazing.
opening door. They looked up at the plasma TV and there's this really meaningful thing. A lot of times it was real kids doing something wonderful about the world. And I literally saw the demeanor in these kids change from sadness to
Mhm.
gloom to happiness and hope. And I get teary eyed even thinking about it because these kids, they started putting thumbs up, putting their arms
Mhm.
around each other and saying, we got this. They went on to class. And I went, wow, every one of us could use that lesson every day.
Absolutely. We can all use a dose of good news every single day. And I love how you shared that the schools are starting out their entire morning over the intercom sharing good news of the day. That blows me away. And just love hearing those kind of stories. So, after all that we've talked about today, what's the one big takeaway that you want listeners to get from this episode?
I think the concept of resilience, because I think too many times we have it wrong. We see it as one trait, or we see it as something that it's too late to do this if it isn't embarked like at age 3,
Mhm.
or it's only certain kids in certain zip codes that are going to
Mm.
have it, or it's a program that's fancy and very pricey. And it's all wrong. Resilience is a process, not a program. It's based on experiences. Parents and teachers make an extraordinary difference on children's lives. Just greeting the kid at the school day door or giving them a hug when you walk in, being there for your kids, passing on good news, cutting out articles and putting it on index cards around your table each night. Here's another thing that happened. You want to talk about this one? Resilience is something that I think this generation is going to need more than ever, and it's going to raise up a stronger group of kids who can handle whatever comes their way. They're growing up in an unpredictable, accelerated, mean kind of a world. And when you put those three things together, it's a trifecta for stress. And one of the best ways to handle stress is having a coping strategy. What I wanted to do when I wrote Thrivers was give you dozens. You choose the one that's going to work for you, and maybe do it as a family, or maybe do it as a classroom. Or I've got schools who are now called Thriver schools, and they have, can you imagine this? Thriver squads, kids who meet at lunch once a week, and they're the ones that video the skill. So I walk into the classroom and there's kids over the, on the loudspeaker and on the smart boards teaching their peers the lesson. And I've never seen so many engaged kids looking up going, we got this.
That is
Yeah, you do.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's incredible. It really is. Our listeners may want more information about you, about your work and your books. What are the best ways for our listeners to connect with you?
Oh, thank you for that. Well, my name's Michele Borba. I'm a 1L Michelle, and Borba rhymes with Zorba. So there you go. My website's michelleborba.com. Thrivers is one of those books that seems to be a hot issue right now. Unselfie is another one. And that's a whole thing on the 9 habits of empathy, but they go hand in hand. So just slowly figure out what you think your kids need. You can also go onto my website, and there's little video clips that you can look at to help you learn each of those 7 traits, and then find one little thing you want to do over and over until your family and your kids can do it without you.
Awesome. Well, I'll be sure to link all that in our show notes. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate your passion for this work, for your practical wisdom, so that we can make a difference for our future and for the future of our next generation. I just appreciate so much sharing your time with us today and sharing your work with the world. We appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. It's been a hot, really.
Thanks for listening to the Communities of Character podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others and post about it on social media or leave a rating and review. Thanks again, and take care.